Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, there's something to be said about diving into, the minutia, the details of a life that has been lived so very uniquely. And you know what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because quite frankly, you're listening right now. And if you are, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, and, well, there's probably some other places that I'm forgetting about too, at In the Seats, for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we live to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So do us that kindness and pay us a visit. On this episode, boy oh boy, we got a fun one. We got a real interesting one. This film played TIFF and a few other festivals, and it is called The Pigeon Tunnel, which is on Apple TV Plus as we speak, and it is a documentary about the life of noted author John le Carré, and it spans 6 decades as le Carré gives a very personal interview intercut with archival footage, and we get anecdotes from his life, and it's set against the backdrop of the Cold War and extends into present day. It really shows what a unique man this guy was, and I mean, and obviously the stories that he told were incredibly unique as well. It's currently in the middle of a limited theatrical run, and like I said, it is streaming now on Apple TV Plus, but we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the producers of the film, the one and only Stephen and Simon Cornwell, who just happened to be the sons of John le Carré. Le Carré is a pen name, obviously. But we dove into the specifics about, telling this story. And I mean, if he wanted to tell the story and really sort of breaking down the intricacies of this unique storyteller in John le Carré, sitting down, being interviewed by another unique storyteller, the one and only Errol Morris, who directed the film. But it is a fascinating watch. If you're a fan of le Carré, or if not, it's just really, really an interesting film. So, like I said, check it out on Apple TV Plus. It's The Pigeon Tunnel. But first, enjoy our talk with producers Stephen and Simon Cornwell, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. But gentlemen, first off, just thank you so much for the time today, and congratulations on the film. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Now, I mean, I suppose the first question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did Errol come to you, or did you guys go to Errol? Like, how did this ball start rolling?
Well, Errol came to me first, but it's a hard question to answer because our dad was already a huge fan of Errol's work, and had followed Errol's career and was huge fan of The Fog of War, and so it was Errol who made the first reach out, but the reach out fell on very fertile soil, if that's not a horribly mixed metaphor.
Not at all. No, I'll take it. But I mean, I guess because just seeing, especially the structure, given how it was based off Pigeon Tunnel, as opposed to sort of a more traditional sort of bio documentary kind of pick. Was that initially always the purpose? Because I mean, to see sort of an enigmatic filmmaker and an enigmatic writer sort of together. Like, it was really made for a lot of electricity that I can imagine even you guys wouldn't have even expected.
I mean, from Errol loved the Pigeon Tunnel, and as a book, he thought it was one of our dad's best books, and I think that's also a very Errol response, because it speaks a lot to Errol's character. He loved the fact that it's this sort of constructed autobiography of truth, but a truth that also say this might not be true, and he found that all fascinating and was very drawn into that. I think the beauty of Errol's process, and a fascinating part of working with Errol, particularly as people that mainly live in the world of drama, is that Errol, as a documentarian, finds his journey in the doing of it, right? And so it's not like he's laid out his path and just follows that path. And for him, absolutely, this was not in any way a bio or some sort of definitive story of or beginning and end. It was a journey into a conversation and an exploration that in its doing would define that fable or that story that he found or that path he found. And I think what's great about that interaction with our dad is that our dad, in a way, also, I mean, obviously is also a creator of story, and his storytelling as a fictional writer is more to apply a fable into the world in which that story lives. So I think part of that sort of chemistry that you see between them is that they're both amazing storytellers, but they both find the story in slightly different ways.
And by the way, I think that if we had ever suggested to our dad a biopic documentary that began the day that he was born and worked, he not only would have run a mile from the documentary, I doubt he would ever have spoken to us again.
Yes, I think if we'd said it in a room to both our dad and Errol simultaneously, they would have left by different doors and we'd never seen either of them again.
So I think if this hadn't threatened, I mean, we had no idea where the journey was going to take us, but if it hadn't clearly had the ingredients of a creatively interesting journey from day one, it's not one we would ever have embarked on.
For sure. Now, I mean, I'm curious, when did this entire process start? Because in watching the film, you definitely got the sense that your dad was very happy that this was like the perfect time to tell this story and to do a film like this.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we started talking about the film almost exactly 5 years ago, and we shot the interview pretty much exactly 4 years ago in October of 2019. So it was the perfect time. I mean, our dad talks in the movie about being able to look back from his great age, but at the same time, the movie clearly shows a man very much at the height of his powers. So I think in that sense, it was perfectly timed. And the movie, sadly, because of the sort of the long journey, the pandemic, and then our dad passing and so on, the movie has been on quite a long creative journey since that interview, but it's I hope has paid off. I mean,
I think it is. I mean, and then some.
It's very good to hear. I mean, I think both of us love the movie with a passion, but we're probably exactly the least objective people on the planet to make that assessment. So, anyway.
But I mean, that dovetails into something I've been dying to ask, because I mean, obviously you've been very involved with the myriad of adaptations for the screen of your father's books. But I mean, how did he feel being involved in a film? Because it almost feels like the idea of one of his novels and, a TV or a film adaptation don't necessarily go hand in hand, because your father's books are so layered and they're so rich that you're just not going to be able to get all that on the screen.
Well, I mean, I think, there are lots of answers to that in a way. I think some of his books are very, tend to the more visceral, and they're tighter and shorter, or they have a narrative core that actually works very well in featured context, but necessarily that adaptation has to have an opinion to it. It has to have an authorship to it. It has to be additive in a sense in terms of identifying the themes and the essence of that book, and bringing that into a cinematic feature context. But I think we've also been very lucky to live in an era of the rediscovery of longer form storytelling in really exciting ways in broadcast or television or nonlinear, and in many cases those fit with his books beautifully, right? Because they do allow you to do exactly that, to go much deeper into character, to take your time, to explore, even to expand on things he's done in the books. And so when he was very excited by adaptation, he'd had years when he was frustrated by some of it, by the time it took or the complexity or the studio system, but he became to be really excited by what it could bring, and also to recognize that for a successful adaptation, it needs to become its own thing. It needs its own creative voice, it needs its own talent, it needs its own authenticity, and it needs its own passion that drive it. People need to find themselves in the creation of those films or television productions.
Well, and I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing, because I mean, I have love for Gary Oldman's version of Tinker Tailor, but also the one with Alec, which I think is absolutely genius. And I mean, with that and Smiley's people, and I mean, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like, where do you see sort of the legacy of your dad's work going, especially when it comes to film and television? Because I mean, again, so many of these stories, you can go back to the well, you can find more stuff. Like I said, both Tinker Tailors kind of stand on their own.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, I think in terms of broadly where we're heading with the adaptations, I think there are, a lot of his stories that translate extremely well into the present day, that a lot of them sometimes even have gained relevance in the present day compared to the time at which they were written. And then I think there are, obviously with the Spy Who Came In From the Cold, the Smiley sequence, the Smiley books, are sort of fundamentally period. They speak to a divided divided world with the Berlin Wall and the sort of West and East opposed to each other, and I think those are pieces of storytelling that probably belong in period, but I mean at the same time full of extraordinary metaphors for the present day. So I guess the challenge for us, for Stephen and me, is to find ways that are, to adapt the great period sequences that are faithful to the time that they were made in,
Sure.
but still, or that they were written in, but still speak to the present, both in terms of the sort of innovation in form and drama and storytelling that we've seen and that feel thematically relevant to the present day. I mean, okay, we don't have the Berlin Wall, but
Right.
telling a story about a fundamentally divided world somehow feels kind of relevant today.
No, totally. Now, I mean, just last question to put a bow on this. In watching the film, I really appreciated the art of being enigmatic, which it really feels like it sums up what your dad was all about. Now, I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, what do you feel your dad's legacy is, especially now with this film coming out to Apple in a couple of weeks?
What I hope his legacy is, and what I feel it is for me, and you see some of these things in the film, is that yes, there were lots of things he was very skeptical of. He often wrote stories that had a darkness to them, that lived in a gray world. But what you see in the movie, which is very true to him, is a humor, a humanity, a huge curiosity in people and the world around him, someone that's absolutely focused on today and tomorrow, and almost despite himself and despite his self-analysis and self-criticism often, actually the glint in his eye can't deny some sort of essential optimism in the human capacity, at least for creativity and voice,
For sure.
some positivity. And I think that spark in his eyes and that spark in his voice, and as you say, an enigma which wasn't a false one, it was a self-questioning,
Right.
life, and yet the mischief within it and the fun, that's what I would hope, it's a good part of his legacy, as well as his extraordinary stories and characters.
You're absolutely right. There's no artifice. It's just who he was. But I mean, gentlemen, thank you for sharing your dad's story and this story on the screen. And I can't wait for more and more people to see it. But thank you again for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's
Lovely talking
great
to you.
to talk.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.